But we got to move on. I want to go to the next caller here in Ransom. This is calling from Bakersfield, California. Hey, Ransom, you're on the air.
Good evening. How are you guys doing today? My first question, Jamie, are you screwing with me? How long ago did you put that shirt on? I promise there's no sexual context behind it.
I mean, this shirt?
Yes.
I was actually wearing a different shirt at work today. I wore this shirt 2 days ago on a stream in the after party on Neil 604
since you put it on. Just now, since you put it on.
Do you think he changed shirts while we were doing the show?
I think I'm actually hoping he didn't, because in the live stream right before you guys got started up, there was mention of you looking like Al Borland when you're animated, and then you show up with a flannel shirt looking like Richard Karn.
Oh, well, that's so I send so we have an artist that does those pictures for me. You should definitely check it out. She's on Instagram at Prince Ep Ed. Yes, Epsed, AEPSED. Anyway, and I send a picture to them to get a headshot from it, and they make those. So they don't always match up to what the person happens to be wearing that day. You know, she just.
No, he wasn't wearing flannel in the shirt, in the animation.
Was wearing a suit.
He was wearing. No. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like I said, we send those to an artist, and they get that done separately.
Also, I don't know either of the names that you said, so I'm assuming.
Have you seen Home Improvement?
Oh, you know what? The last time I wore this shirt, someone said something about looking like the guy from Home Improvement.
You're like Tim Allen.
Well.
You're also like Haley Joel Osment, as we discovered today. But that's another thing.
Yeah, I think I've seen a picture of that guy before.
But Ransom, what did you really want to talk to us about today?
Yeah.
Well, it's actually that did kind of tie into it, just because of what you would call coincidence. Well, I don't know what to call it right now.
The word coincidence will work. No.
Well, yeah, but I see patterns more hyperactively than most people do, and it I don't know whether or not to believe in a God.
Okay.
I'm on the fence right now, and when I don't believe, it leads me toward belief. When I'm starting to go toward belief, I get led toward not belief, and I'm mixed up.
Yeah.
So how do you go about when you go through these, reflecting on whether or not you think there's a good reason to believe in a God? Can you talk us through generally how your thought process goes?
Well, talk to the people who disagree with me.
That's good. Sounds like you talk to a lot of smart, persuasive people then.
I listen to a lot of smart, persuasive people.
Right.
So, Ransom, a bit of context about my background. I was a Christian for a number of years, and, I did the same thing. I just kind of hunkered down, and I just listened to people that thought differently from me for a little while. And I just kind of closed my mouth and just, tried to cede my objections and just let people talk and talk about, one, their experiences, but also, two, the reasons why they had this disbelief. Because for a lot of people, they start out believing and then they don't. Some people, obviously they don't live their whole lives, but the majority of people, at least in this community, I've found were believers at one point and then they didn't, because they listened to other people who didn't believe. And so, we could talk about the different reasons all day, but what specifically... obviously, like Jamie and I have conclusions, right? Like there's Jamie Joel Osment over there in the back. I like it for those who are watching live. It's pretty good. So, we could talk about the different reasons and stuff all day, but, I don't think that's going to matter unless we talk about what is keeping you in belief specifically, and what is hesitating, what is stopping you from calling yourself one way or the other, or why can't you call yourself an atheist today? Like, what's holding you back?
Well, I believe, based on likelihood, that there is existence outside of the universe. I have no reason to believe it's a God, because for all I know, it could be some jackass on Twitch that's been running me around nowhere for the last 30 years.
Yeah. So, the question of atheism really is just accounting for God or not, right? So if you say you don't believe there's gods or any gods, then you're good. That means you're an atheist. You can believe that there's outside forces or whatever, but if we're just talking about gods, then yeah, that's it.
Well, what's the difference between a force that can act on whim upon the universe and a god?
Well, so historically, people have different conceptions of God. Generally, God is a personality of some kind, with different kinds of attributes that we could relate to personhood. If we're just talking about general forces, yes, they can be powerful, but that's also in the context of human beings, right? We just recognize what's stronger, what's weaker, based on our experiences and stuff. So I wouldn't have a reason to call gravity a god, for example, because I don't attribute any personhood to it or any kind of specific attributes that define it outside of the context of a natural force.
Well, I'm not going to plug myself in any way. Oh, go ahead, Jamie. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, basically what Dan touched on with the difference is agency. If you meant like an active thinking, decision-making, opinion-having, I was about to say brain force, agent, as it were, that can act on the universe, then that's close to some definitions that people have used for God. Usually in the modern era, it's the classical, all-powerful, I know everything God, but,
Right, but just in context of likelihood, I write fiction. I'm not going to plug myself, but I write fiction, and I know that I can create a universe that I can control on whim. I am a god relative to that universe within my mind.
Yeah, but that's not really what people mean when we talk about atheism and theism, though, right?
Do you know what repeating fractals are?
Yes.
Okay, so when we get into repeating fractals and we see things like frame tales, like the Canterbury Tales, what we see is that we can have a story within a story within a story.
Yeah.
And based on likelihood, we have no stories that don't exist within a story, which leads me to believe.
I'm sorry, hold on. When you say we don't have stories that exist outside of another story, what you're describing is an infinite regress of stories that exist for all stories. Once upon a time, there was a sentient traffic cone, and he was sad because he got stuck on this table and went nowhere else. And that was the end of his conscious life. I believe that the story I've just told you does not exist inside another story. Am I understanding what you're talking about within a story correctly?
At that point, we need evidence that we are not one of the stories existing of another mind.
So hold on, because part of what you said, at least implied to me, that you're asserting that it is true that this is a story. Is that a belief that you hold?
I find it more likely than not. I can't assert it, no, but I find it more likely than not.
What persuades you of that?
What?
Why do you find that likely?
Because every universe that we know of was created of conscious mind.
Okay.
Well,
hold on.
Wait.
So
I don't know.
We know of one, and as far as I'm aware,
I think he means he's talking about fictional universes like Game of Thrones or like
Is
Harry
that what
Potter,
you mean,
right?
or do you mean this one?
Well, the universe, we tend to explain things in terms of other things we understand, correct?
Yeah, it's the only way to.
So the only universes that we know of that we can explain the origins to are universes that are of digital origin or of psychological, mental origin.
Yeah, so I disagree, because what you've just described, as you've said, we don't know about this universe, but you think it's likely.
Here's what I would say.
This universe is different than the books we read.
Here's what I would say. I think this is a conflation of the terms universe.
Yes.
Because when we're talking about universe, we're talking about natural forces containing everything that we know to exist. Whereas I think you're also including like the stories that people write and like the narratives that people construct. To, whether it be to explain something or just for fiction or fun. I wouldn't say that those two are the same things, right? Like if we're talking about the universe as physics, that's got to be separate from the universes that we create as storytellers, don't you think?
Well, if we don't have a form of a universe that doesn't exist outside of a conscious mind, then it is more likely than not that our universe is of conscious mind.
But don't you think our universe, like the one that we both inhabit, exists outside of our conscious mind?
Outside of ours, yes.
Yeah.
But outside of any conscious mind, I don't know.
So
Yeah,
let me
I
ask
don't know
this
either,
question.
but
When a person creates, for example, Game of Thrones, this is a type of universe that you're describing. It's a story, right? Do you believe that the characters in that story and the matter, well, here, that's a magic universe, a story about normal stuff happening on Earth. Do you think that that particular story has mass and fundamental forces and atoms and biology and things on the microscopic level that are not at all described within it?
To get magic out of the scenario, let's use Grand Theft Auto as an example.
Sure. Okay. Grand Theft Auto. Do you believe that that universe, I'm going to put it in quotes because we're using one word in two ways in order to avoid inadvertent equivocation. Do you think that that universe exists, for example, outside of a game console?
No, I don't.
Okay. So is your proposal of, well, this universe seems like it would be a narrative, I mean, not a game console specifically, but that's the type of thing you're thinking about, like, this is a video game.
Well, we are mostly empty space.
I mean, okay.
There is so much room between a proton and an electron.
Is the same true of protons and electrons in Grand Theft Auto?
Basically, it's pixelation that we see a very minute piece of, and inside of the coding is a completely different situation.
So that's my problem. Hold on, because your overarching theme is that this universe is like the other ones, but on a fundamental level, when we go there, you say, well, at a fundamental level, it's different.
No. What I'm saying is that the code is different than what we see on the screen.
Sure.
And the code is mostly empty space inside of a hard drive where we see full solid matter.
No.
When we look at, let me chime in.
Yeah, please.
When I look at Mario, if I'm looking at like an 8-bit Mario, it's actually just squares that I'm just attributing like agency and like personality to, right? Like that's all human built stuff. It's, like this is all happening in my head when I'm looking at Mario and thinking, oh, he's a plumber from Italy. That's not actually being displayed on the screen. That's the cultural context of which I've understood the pictures on the screen to represent, right? Like that's not the same thing as saying, this is a thing that exists inside this universe. Like I think we're going a little too far in saying that this is like a separate universe in itself. And I think it's a term that can be confusing for people, but really it's just, again, it's a cultural context that we're understanding when we're looking at these things, right?
Well, Michio Kaku says that we are based on small vibrating extra-dimensional strings.
Yeah.
And quantum gravity research says that we are created out of Planck tetrahedrons.
But that doesn't make Super Mario Brothers real, though. Like,
yeah.
I don't know how else to say it, right? It's like
so what you've talked about is a lot of
Mario's not real.
Okay, so now I'm confused because you've said that there are stories. These stories exist within stories. This universe that we exist in is a story like those, and this presumably the universe we live in is at least real for us, right?
It's real relative to us, but I don't know if it's objectively real.
When you say objectively real, what do you mean?
in the same sense that random number generators can create a decision in, for the sake of dialogue, we'll go with Oblivion for this part, because Oblivion had that random number generator dialogue that would impersonate free will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how are we to know if we have any free will or if we're just acting on random number?
That's a great question, but it has nothing to do with the God thing, right? 'Cause I think because when we first started, we were asking whether or not you would describe yourself as an atheist and a theist, and we were talking about what are the arguments for and against the existence of a God, and I'm kind of more interested in exploring that. Right, because whether free will or not exists, there could still be a God or not, right? So like I'd like to go back to that if we could.
Yeah. Also, it seems like your answer didn't address at least what I was trying to get at, which was things about objective reality, because your answer was about consciousness and free will, which is different.
It all seems to tie in together for me. If we are acting,
that's the impression I'm getting. Yeah.
It's basically that secular Buddhism where I want to be one with everything, and I can't.
You kind of are.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that everything ends. I don't know
Who says it
where
does?
the.
Oh.
Whoa.
Whoa. That's Jamie's just pulling out.
Barbadurkle. Somebody's gonna get laid in college.
Did you just pull out a cone, like a Buddhist cone, out of your ass right now?
I mean,
what's going on?
that's not how I would have described the conversation just now. But
Barbadurkle, did you just quote my favorite show?
Eek Barbadurkle, yes, I did.
Oh my
Have you
God.
seen the new season? Okay,
Get out of here. Anyway,
All right.
so
sorry, but back to the God thing, which is
so
what Dan wanted to get to.
It sounds like you don't have a God belief, right? So to answer your question, you're an atheist, at least by our definition of what atheist
At
means.
the expansive definition, yeah.
Yeah. So
Because even if it's all powerful relative to this universe, it could be borderline useless in its own universe, in its own plane. Once we get, because I do think that the E8 lattice and the 8th dimensional universe is a thing. And I think the multiverse exists within it. And kind of like I said at the beginning of this, it could be all powerful here. It could be a friggin' dishwasher in its own plane of existence.
maybe,
Okay.
but unless it has agency, then I wouldn't call it a God.
Also, we don't know that there is an it or that there is a universe in the scientific sense outside of this one.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. But anyway, I do want to get to the other callers here. 'Cause
Yeah.
we did spend a bit of time on this, but
The last thing. Oh.
yeah, I was just gonna say, Ransom, I appreciate you calling. I hope that we at least answered something for you.
Damn.
As you were calling in. But if you want to discuss this more, I'm willing to talk about, multiple universes and string theory and all kinds of stuff, but it's hard to talk about all of those things at the same time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So maybe next time we can explore it a bit more. Sound good?
Yeah.
I understand completely. It's getting easier for me to grasp it. And I've already decided humanism first.
Hell yeah.
Whether or not gods exist
Woo!
is irrelevant.
Yeah. So
I'm into it. So
everything else is window dressing.
that's right. So Ransom, keep on trucking, and I will talk to you next time you call.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah. I mean, I hope he does call in again or goes on the Discord or the Reddit, or he just shows up at someone's house and knocks on the door and we chat then. But it seems like a lot of where it was going, I guess the call's over, but was from a kind of rationalist approach to understanding the universe, which is what one can understand rationally. But I am a bigger fan of empiricism because it depends on things that are objective, right? His description of universes as narratives, from my perspective, exist in a mind, and he seems to be putting together. I don't know.
Our
I would
constructs within our universe.
Yeah, I would say
Right?
this makes me want to reread Kant's critique of pure reason.
When you read, you don't create a separate universe when you're talking about Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, right? It's still.
I would say not in the same way that this. exist.
It's still a part of the physics that make up our universe. Even the cognitive aspects of thinking about a fictional universe are still part of our universe. You know what I mean? So like you saying that this is a separate universe, like it's a conflation of terms, and people who are really trying to grift you will conflate these terms to try to convince you of, all kinds of bullshit that's not real. So it's just something to look out for when you're like experimenting with these kinds of thoughts. Because the first time when you're thinking about this stuff, it's kind of wild. And it's hard to put it all into groups and terms. And here we are saying, hey, like we kind of thought about this. Here's how we do it. Maybe there's other people who think differently. But until we talk about that again, I do want to go to another caller here. I want to go